We're gonna get right into it. Today on the Matt and Ann show, we welcome the legendary comedian Tommy Chong on the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for the clap. Appreciate it.
Basically, we want to start at the beginning of your career.
Sure.
Before you were a comedian, you were actually a singer, and you were
more of a guitar player, a backup guitar player.
And one of the groups that actually opened up for you was the Jackson 5. Can you tell us about that?
Well, we were working. We shared a bill with Jerry Butler in Chicago at the Regal Theater, and the Jackson 5 had won a contest at their high school, and the prize was opening up for us, Jerry Butler and the Vancouvers at the Regal Theater in Chicago. And there they were, opening up. They were probably the best group I've ever heard, you know, even though Michael was a tiny little guy, but he was an adult when I met him. And then as he got older, he got younger. And then when he died, he was a little baby. But when I met him, he couldn't be any more adult. He dressed like an adult. He combed his hair or fluffed up his natural. You know, he'd be standing in the mirror on a Coke carton, just so he could see the mirror. And when you talk to him, it's like you're talking to a little adult. He had more sense than all of them. And then, yeah. So what happened? Bobby Taylor, the lead singer of our group, and you know, kind of the reason why you were there, period. You know, because he had the voice. So Bobby took the Jackson 5 under his wing and said, "Yeah, come on to Detroit with me, and you can stay at my house, and I'll get you signed up with Motown." And that's what they did. They went and stayed with Bobby and just the guys, not Mrs. Jackson or any of the ladies. It was just the boys, and I think they stayed at Bobby's for almost a month before Motown got around to actually giving them an audition. And but once they auditioned them, wow. And then everything went into motion. Like Bobby Taylor and the Vancouvers weren't really the best group as far as they were concerned to be the one that discovered them. And so they gave it to Diana Ross. They said, "Oh, Diana Ross." Well, what happened? Diana Ross discovered us.
Yeah.
And so we discovered the Jackson 5. And so they said, well, they eliminated us and just said Diana Ross discovered them, but no one cares, you know. And yeah, they went with that lie for quite a while. And then Bobby was rewarded by producing their first album, the Jackson 5, with Motown. And then of course, then they evolved, you know, Michael and the boys, you know, they just went their way and became who they became.
Did you stay in contact with them at all after your music days, or was
it from that time? Yeah, you know, the boys, Jermaine and Jackie and the rest of the guys, they were more into Bobby Taylor and the Vancouvers, you know, than Michael. Michael, you know, was always Michael. He was just into Michael. And because he could do anything that you could do, he could do it way better, way faster, you know, whatever it was, whatever, writing a song or dancing, doing a dance step or whatever. Michael, you know, he lived in his own world, and he was he was what he was, you know, he became what he became. When you look at the Jackson 5, they were probably the premier group, regardless of age. You know, they actually bypassed the boy band thing, and they went right to the adult band, regardless of how young Michael was. And Joe was interesting because Joe is very, you know, not illiterate, but but the skills. Like I don't know if he had much more than a high school education, if that. But what Joel, the dad, he saw the future for the boys, just like Serena Williams and Venus. You know, their dad, the King Richard, he saw their future too, and he knew what to do. And that's exactly what Joe had in mind too, because Joe was figure out what he was raising, 5 boys in the ghetto in Gary, Indiana, and you don't, that ghetto is a trap. It's hard to get out of it, once you get into it, especially those guys. And so that's why Joe, he actually had them confined to the house. They weren't allowed to go anywhere. They had to stay home and practice. That's what he said. Practice your instruments, practice your dancing, practice. And so when the contract finally came for Motown, Joe and Bobby both, I was the whitest guy they knew. so they brought me the contract. And I used to wear glasses too, so I looked like a Jewish guy. I looked like a Jewish manager. And so they asked me to look at the contract for them, and of course I did. I picked it up and said, it looks good to me. Because, what are you going to do? Motown was the place to be, because they had a school. Motown had a school where they refined everything. All the acts went through the school at Motown. Charlie, forget his name, the teacher, but he was a choreographer and a teacher, and he taught the boys how to move. And he taught Marvin Gaye and all those guys how to move on stage. Smokey and all the Temps, they all had great street moves, dance moves. In fact, the Temps invented or they come up with a style of dancing that spread around. It's still around a little bit, but yeah, Motown was the place to be. And when then the Jackson 5, they just took over, no matter what show they were on. I mean, they just, they're incredible. Their whole career, even the breakup, because Michael was so ahead of the game in so many ways, except with the drugs. Yeah. That was the only thing where he was weak, so weak at, because he really didn't need it. But once you get turned on, it gives you that energy. And, that's why so many of the musicians, of our time, succumb to the drugs, like Prince and all those guys, Michael Jackson. And he was the last guy I ever thought that would have a problem, but because he was the cleanest of all the boys, he wouldn't do anything. And he was very, very spiritual, which kept him, in the game. But I guess, well, money changes everything. Once you got money, then you lose the ability to say no. Because what are you going to do? The guy's got more money than, he can buy his way out of anything except death.
Yeah. How did you end up meeting Cheech? How did it, obviously you just told us about you were in a group, you were the guitars. How did it lead to you meeting Cheech?
Well, the truth is I got fired from Motown. And the reason I got fired is that Motown, like a lot of America, was quite ignorant when it came to matters of race, matters of borders, work visas, stuff like that. What happened with me? I'm being a Canadian. Every time we worked in Detroit without a permit or without a visa, we were breaking the law. And so we got deported, what do you call it? Voluntary departure. That's what they call it. They know you're in there illegally, and so just go home and they won't bother with you. And so we got voluntary departure a couple of times. And then I said, well, now's my chance to get a green card, So I went to Motown, the legal department, told them I needed a green card. So they set it up. And the thing is, when you're dealing with immigration, you don't get a second chance. They tell you to be somewhere, you better be there. And if you're not, they'll put your name at the back of the line again. And so my interview and the bass player, I was trying to get, I always had a partner, and I was the bass player, Wes Henderson, and I, we were a little bit of we had a partnership going because we both sang background with Bobby. Yeah. And he was, and I taught him, he was a singer before when I met him. And so I told him that he should learn an instrument, then he could work more. And so he picked up the bass. And so he was my unwritten partner, and so when I went to get my green card, I included Wes, because he was also Canadian. But in the end, he didn't really want to come to America. His wife, she had family and everything in Edmonton in Canada. And so she wasn't, gung-ho on that at all. And so anyway, we had to miss a gig. We were backing up Chris Clark, one of Barry's singers in his entourage or in his stable. And so I was going to have to miss, Wes too. We were going to have to miss the Saturday night gig because we had a meeting Saturday. And what immigration will do too, they'll give you the weirdest dates, just to test you, to make sure that you really want the green card. And so anyway, we had to be there Saturday. And so I told the band, what do you call him, manager, Johnny Bristol. I said that I'm going to have to miss Saturday, both Wes and I both. And he told me, he said, well, if you miss the gig, don't bother coming back, you're fired. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Because Johnny Bristol didn't hire me. If anybody hired me, it was Barry Gordy. So if anybody was going to fire me, it was Barry Gordy. So I went to the meeting, and then went to the Motown office to pick up our tickets to go back to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and there was no ticket for me. There was a ticket for Wes, but there was no ticket for me. And so I got the hint. I was okay. But I had my girlfriend and my baby, my love child, waiting for me at the motel. And plus I had my guitar amp and my guitar. Everything was in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. So I had to go back. And so they got me a ticket. And I went back, and as soon as I walked in the club, Johnny Bristol says, "You're fired. I told you miss a gig, you're out of here. Get your shit and go home." And so I looked at the rest of the band. Now, the rest of the band could have saved me. They could have said, well, if he's fired, we're fired. You know, you don't have a band, you know. And the thing was, I was the what do you call it, behind the scenes leader of the band. You know, I never really led a band because I never had the musical knowledge needed, you know, to be smarter than everybody. But I had a lot of other uh, good things about me, you know, but like know when to get a green card, for instance. That was one of them. And so when I got back to the gig, I got fired, and I went to the motel where Shelby was in bed, and she says, "Oh, you're home early," and I said, "I got fired," and she said, "Oh, that's good. Come to bed. That band sucked." And so it was. That was the beginning, and so I went back. Barry Gordy phoned me, and he said, you know, there was a mistake. You know, of course, you're not fired. You know, you're the leader and all that. And I told Barry, I said, you know what? I want to become a Barry Gordy. I don't want to work for one, you know. And so he said, I understand that totally. And so he gave me a nice little severance pay, and I tripped off to first to L.A. I wanted to live in LA and be a bodybuilder and a songwriter. That was my plan, you know. And LA is perfect, you know, had the beach, and so, and then my wife, I was married with my first family. They wanted to come to LA too, so I fixed it up for them to come to LA, and because they're Maxine, my first wife, her brother was the drummer of the Three Dog Night, and he was stationed in L.A., and so it would have been it ended up great, and so they came too, and my two older daughters, you know, they came, and I actually juggled the two families for almost a year, you know, and then. Then I met Cheech. I met Cheech up in Canada. And by that time we had two nightclubs, and one was a strip club. And I turned the strip club into an improvisational nightclub where the strippers were actresses, and then the doorman and then myself, we were the comedians, you know, we had a really good fun group there. And we had a straight man, and he got fired because his wife didn't know what he was working with strippers. And so we're looking for a straight man, and then a mutual friend, Russian. There's a big Russian connection with us all along. It was a Russian. He owned a hippie magazine called Poppin', and Cheech worked for him. And so he said, I know a guy would be perfect for your show. And so he invited me out to his office where Cheech was working, and I met Cheech, and then Cheech came down that night to the club to see what we were doing, and he saw and he liked it, and so we hooked up. It was all serendipity, you know. It was all kind of meant to be, because everybody in the group, we didn't know what Cheech was, you know, because he wasn't being Mexican, you know, at all in Canada. He was anything but, and he was. We didn't know what he was. You know, he looked like East Indian. He could have been anything. You know, a lot of people in Calgary thought he was a native. You know, indigenous, like a Lakota Sioux or something. But he was, and we found out he was Mexican when we got to LA. But until then, we had no idea what he was. And then my brother fired us because the strip, the acting thing wasn't making the kind of money the strippers were making, and so my brother took the club back to being a strip club again, and then Cheech and I Cheech and I went ahead and came down to LA and became Cheech and Chong.
That's absolutely awesome.
A great story. Well, how did the movie come about? Is that around the time?
And what was that again? I couldn't understand.
How did Up in Smoke come to be? Was that
Up in Smoke?
planned ahead of time, or was it something that gradually became a thing?
No, what happened is that I got tired of going to Australia every year, because you go to Australia, you miss summer in America, and then you're just in time for winter in Australia. And then so we did that, I think 3 times in a row, and we were getting so popular in Australia that they wanted us every year. But every time we'd go over there, I would have to write a new show. And, you know, it was like a movie. You couldn't do the same movie every time you went over there because you had the same crowd. And so that was like 3 brand new shows, which was okay, but that's a lot. That you know, writing shows and writing records, and that takes a lot out of you. You know, it just drains the shit out of you. And so next thing I know, they're talking about Australia again. I don't want to go. So I was writing. I'd met a screenwriter, and we were working on a script together. I had an idea for a Cheech and Chong movie called Jock and the Weedstock, where you get into the tail, you know, where you meet the giant and that. But and so I told Lou and our manager and Cheech what I was doing, and then Lou said, "Well, let me get a movie deal for you." And so he went to his friends in Paramount, and they came up with a movie deal. But Lou wanted it to be our greatest hits, talking about our records. My dog's barking, by the way. I'll let him bark for a while. Hold on just a minute. I got to tell him to shut up. Hey, get in here. Hey, don't walk away from me. Come back here. Hey, stop it. Stop it. You stop it, or I'll take you back to the pound. He doesn't listen to me. I forget where I was.
You were writing the script.
Oh yeah. So Lou wanted it to be the Cheech and Chong's greatest hits, you know, and we actually wrote a few. We started, you know, we kind of humored them a bit, but when we started working on, when we decided we're going to do, you know, Cheech and Chong movie and not a cartoon or not a animation, you know, then Cheech and I sort of got together and we decided that we'd use those 2 characters, you know, the lowrider and the hippie, and then it went from there. And then I wrote a song called Up in Smoke, and then Cheech added the Spanish version, you know, the words to it. And then, and then we just did the movie. And then when they edited at the end, I didn't like the ending, so I arranged to shoot the ending that's in the movie. And that was kind of bittersweet because it gave us a hit movie, but we broke up with our producer, our longtime producer, Lou Adler, you know, because, you know, a few things, you know, financially didn't work out the way we thought it should work out. And so we went our ways, and then I directed the rest of the movies after that. I actually directed a lot of the Up in Smoke too, but I got to admit that Lou and the boys, they added the Stadenko part, and they added all the straight parts. They did a great job with that. And Lou also had the best cast ever. Stacy Keach and Strother Martin and all those great movie icons, and that really made Up in Smoke. That's what, it was a combination of everything, but a little bit of the old actors, yeah, it was very ordained, very meant to be movie.
Any funny stories from set from Up in Smoke?
Oh, there's a ton of them. For instance, they've always asked us, did you guys get high when you're doing it? And we said no, but we got high in between takes. And we were high when we shouldn't be. Like we would forget the cues, especially driving. We'd be sitting in the car, about a half a mile from the camera, and they would tell us on the walkie-talkie. They were very cool about it. Say, okay, but both Cheech and I were too stoned to hear them. And so we would sit there, and they would be running the tape, and we're not moving anywhere. It was like if we did a behind the scenes thing, it would have been very funny.
Do you have a favorite moment in your career?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
You have a favorite moment in your career?
Oh, hold on just a minute. Captain, come here. Come here. Hey. He ignores me, that little bastard. Here you go. No, what was the question?
Do you have a favorite moment from your career?
Any what moments?
A favorite moment?
Favorite moment in my career? Yeah, there's a few. I think one of my favorite moments, a couple, meeting all the Beatles except Paul at a party, in the Stones, and I don't know, and all sorts of, probably Led Zeppelin. I don't know. There was a whole mess of them at this one party. It was almost like introducing Cheech and Chong to the famous people, and that was a party I'll never forget, because we. I wanted to get high, and so Lou Adler, he said, well, go in my bedroom. And I go in there, and I light up a joint, and I look down, and oh, there's John Lennon sitting on the floor. And so I offered John Lennon a toke, and he refused because of he was having immigration problems. And so he didn't want to get drug tested. And then Rod Stewart walked in, and he started fluffing up his hair. And so I offered Rod a toke, and Rod turned it down. Everybody turned me down at that night at that party. But a few years later, I met George Harrison, and George and I we were smoking out, and then there's another guy joined the crowd, and I look over, and remember the show Leave It to Beaver?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was Wally, the older brother, Tony Dow. Tony Dow was there. Gee, Wally. And he took the joint from me. And yeah. But I had a couple of nice moments with George Harrison. And that was really nice. I really enjoyed that. My second oldest son, Jabron, he's a musician too, and he's got that George Harrison sort of gentle vibe, that the gentleness, all about music, and spirituality, nothing about politics.
When did your love of weed start? Because obviously you're one of the biggest endorsers of weed. Maybe
It started when I was 17 years old. A friend of mine, well, he owned a jazz club in Calgary. It was a private club, and it was actually where musicians could go and play after hours, and then we could go hang out. There's no dancing unless you wanted to, but it was mostly sit and listen. And that's when I got turned on to pot at that time, and where he gave me a joint and a Lenny Bruce comedy album. And so, there again, my life has been very serendipity. These moments happen, and it was like ordained, And I put the joint in my pocket, and Raymond lit up his own joint, and I took a toke, and I've never been so high in my life. It was the most beautiful high. And I remember the song I was listening to is called Lonely Woman by Ornette Coleman. So if you get a chance, check it out. It's a beautiful jazz tune that I could literally see a lonely woman sitting in a hotel room waiting for her lover to come. And yeah, and that joint lasted me about a month, a good month. I'd take a little toke and put it out, just get enough to get high, like at the first time. And yeah, and that's when my love of weed started, and that's when my respect for weed started, because I never knew. You never knew when you got high in Calgary. You never knew when you're going to get another chance to smoke up. There was no pipeline, with the weed like there is now. But back then, the cops didn't know what it was. No one knew what it was. And I never equated smoking weed with being illegal or bad, because I knew better. I knew it wasn't. I knew it wasn't. It would only lead. It was a gateway drug only if you were a junkie to begin with, or an alcoholic. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of cokeheads are alcoholics. The reason they do cocaine is so that they can have the energy to drink and stay up later and drink more alcohol. A lot of them, that's the way they look at it. And weed, that's why a lot of healthy people, that I knew, bodybuilders and musicians, health-minded musicians. It seems like jazz, when you get into jazz, if you're lucky enough to stay away from the heroin, because that'll kill you, that'll take you down, or the cocaine. But if you just stay with weed and jazz, well, then look at me, because that's really why I got to be in the position I am. Because, well, you take John Belushi, for instance. John was a big fan of Cheech and Chong's, and but he had a drug problem. He had a lot of problems, but it was eating, and drugs, and just doing too much of everything, and so you pay a price when you go that route. And well, that dog, that beat his ass. And I don't know who he's barking at. There's no one in there. Captain. Oh, he listened to me. Oh, he wants in now. Look at. Before he was ignoring me. Now he wants in. Oh, I'll leave him out there. Do you want him? Okay. Come on.
You were telling us about Belushi. Do you have any great stories with you and Belushi hanging out?
Well, Belushi, there used to be a John Belushi alert in the movie industry, because when John was doing all the movies, especially Blues Brothers, he would make unannounced visits to different people in the industry, and because he was always loaded on something, we never did figure out what, be it coke or be it pills or what it was, but he would come in your office, and what no matter what music was being played, he would rip it off and put on his own CD of some local punk band that that just horrible. And he would turn the volume up as loud as he could go, and literally people would be crawling out of windows to get away from him. But that was Belushi at his worst. People actually hid from him because he was such a force. His whole thing, was just, he was always on 11. Everybody else would be on 8. Belushi would be on 11. He was quite a guy. He's quite a guy. And he was a big Cheech and Chong fan. And that's one of the reasons why Cheech and Chong have never been on Saturday Night Live. We've never hosted, we've never even been appeared on it, because Lorne Michaels, he was anti-drugs, and Belushi and Aykroyd and them, they were, and what's his name? I can't think of the name now. Chevy Chase. They were all druggies, and they kind of blamed Cheech and Chong for promoting the lifestyle, and now it's legal. We promoted it so much, we got it legal.
Well, that goes to my next question is that I know you have your own cannabis. Can you tell us about your cannabis and how it helped you?
What's that?
Can you tell us about your cannabis company that you own, and tell people where they can find it?
Okay, well, we started out with a bong company. And then, I went to jail over that. And then when we got out, because of my activism, I became a spokesperson for a lot of the cannabis legalization. And in fact, Cheech and I did a tour where it was Get It Legal tour. And we started in 2008. And we had T-shirts, everything to get it legal. And then, we had no choice really, because we were getting busted and popped and everything. But because we're both fitness advocates as well, not just we didn't just smoke. I mean, I knew Arnold Schwarzenegger back before he was Arnold Schwarzenegger, the movie actor. And in fact, we performed with Arnold at one of his Mr. Olympia contests. Cheech and Chong performed at one, and it was quite the talk of the town, because we did a bit called Queer Wars. Instead of Star Wars, it was Queer Wars. And because the bodybuilding community is mostly gay, they were shocked, and they fell out of their seats, because we had dildos as guns, and they're going around going, come, come, come. And they, what's the matter? I can't come. And then you try to reload it. Oh, we had so much fun with that bit. It was incredible. But the bodybuilding, if you look at from a health standpoint, which I did, and then that tempered my drug use, because if you have a good bodybuilding routine, see what happens. The exercise itself introduces the drugs, the natural drugs, into your system, just from hard work, endorphins. You get these endorphins that helps you, work out and or do sports or whatever. And we and both Cheech and I, whenever we did a movie, it would be mandatory to have a weight set on somewhere handy for us, and we would work out instead of for lunch. Instead of sitting and eating lunch, we'd work out instead, and that really explains a lot of our success, because when you're doing movies, the old pros know that they want, you want something to look at. It's like when you go to an art gallery, if you didn't have really interesting, pretty pictures on the wall, there would be no reason to go, and that's the same thing as movies. If you don't have that good looking one or something in there, then chances are the movie's not going to go too far.
Right.
But if you have something that looks good, then it can be seen over and over again, like Up in Smoke has been done. But if you dissect Up in Smoke to the point of positive, negative, you see, and you'll find more positive than negative. And that was the message that we wanted to convey to our followers, that you can be just as successful and more happy with a good body than with one that's been abused. Because our bodies are our vehicles. This is how we get around, and if we don't treat it right, next thing you know, we're in a wheelchair, or we're using a cane or crutches or something, and we have the ability, ourselves, each of us, to mold. We're all artists if we want to be. We can change our bodies however we want to do it, our whole thing. And that's what I've learned that over the years, because I've been in like a dance contest, and I'm not a dancer, and then I was in the Masked Singer, and I'm not a singer, to the point where they literally had to get a teacher to help me learn the lyrics because I'm a guitar player. I didn't bother learning lyrics. You get your own version and that's it. But that's the weed has helped me accomplish all this, because it's everything has a there's a way to do everything. In cooking, it's called a recipe. In the movies, it's called a script. And if you start off with writing the script, then chances are you can reach unimaginable heights with your career, with whatever you're doing, because that's what for me, that's what marijuana did. It sharpened my senses. It sharpened my brain. It made me think past the obvious, and then when you take away fear, like I've been studying my spiritual books, my Emmett Fox, all the different spiritualists that I follow, And and it's very simple, because we're here, all of us. There's a purpose for us to be here. And the lucky are the ones that find that purpose early in life, because then they can go down that path regardless of the obstacles. And that's the way the physical world works, is that we're designed to play a role in each life that we live. And we're not just here one time. It may seem that way, but the reason it is so that we can concentrate on who we're supposed to be at this particular juncture of our existence. But the truth is that we are eternal beings. We will always be here in one form or another.
Right.
And we're here to learn. And the reason we are who we are is to learn who we are.
Right.
Learn everything. Learn languages. Learn where you are in the world, in the universe. It's all possible. And now we have things like cell phones and computers that will help us think way faster than and learn way faster than our ancestors did, you know.
Right.
And so what I've been learning and still learning is who I am.
Right.
And that's one of the perks of the cannabis, because cannabis will help you. You know what cannabis really does is stop your usual motion and make you realize, there's something new and exciting in your life,
Right.
and you just have to be able to accept it more than anything. It's acceptance. That's why, when people bitch about the pandemic, now I understand if you're caught out there, it can be very uncomfortable. But if you're comfortable with who you are, then you can make great strides.
Right.
Because most of our job really is to rest, to listen. Like when you go to to learn anything, basically you're just there to listen and to learn. And that's how you learn. You learn by listening, And then some of you evolved to become teachers. Well, even when you're teaching, even you're learning, because you're going, oh, I didn't realize that went here and that did this and that did that, but the one thing, and it's a spoiler alert too with me. That's why my son, whenever I start talking, he'll leave the room. Yeah. because I tell people things that they won't learn until later, or maybe not at all.
Right.
But it's still something, when you show people the truth about anything, it doesn't resonate right away sometimes. And sometimes it might take years. Well, like your mother will tell you something, and then years later you go, I remember her telling me. And she told me this was going to happen, and I should have listened to her.
Absolutely. Cheech was in a show with Betty White. Did you ever get a chance to meet Betty White? And do you have any memories of her since we lost her last month?
You know, I never met Betty White, but I was in a movie with Cloris Leachman,
Uh-huh.
and I was the last. I think I was the last guy that actually kissed Cloris Leachman, because I was like an old boyfriend that came back from the past. I'm on a little scooter, and she didn't really recognize me, and I didn't recognize her. I recognized her, but it was really a cute little thing because they kind of knew Cloris was getting ready to leave, and so they got that one episode, one show out of her. But Betty White, no, I never met Betty. Uh, you know, I loved her work. I loved her thing. I just saw a show on Marilyn Monroe, and that I hadn't seen before. It's like the Marilyn you never knew, and you know she was a lot like Betty White because Betty was gorgeous with a gorgeous body too, and although she never, you know, found it like Marilyn did, she still had that same twinkle in her eye. You know that. Yeah, yeah, that's good.
Can you tell us about the you were supposed to be in Lion King as one of the hyenas. Can you tell us about the
Well, you know, Cheech and I broke up at a time when I was ready to take Cheech and Chong to another level. And Cheech just never had the faith in me. And I kind of realized one of the reasons was that up until we broke up, I would split everything with Cheech. You know, I would, you know, we that's why we called ourselves Cheech and Chong. You know, everything we wrote together, and then when I had to direct movies myself without Lou, I realized I am a director and a good director. And the thing is about directing, even though you can have your partner or your brothers or like the Coen brothers, you know, they direct together, in that I never felt that comfortable with Cheech. And don't ask me why. I'm not. Cheech has got a way opposite talent than me. I'm more of an introvert. He's more of an extrovert, and he's more easier to do other people's work. You know, just to be an actor. Whereas I felt very strongly, I still do, that finding characters like Cheech and Chong are once in a lifetime things. You know, you got a lot of actors, but you don't have a lot of Cheech and Chongs. And like I said about learning who you are, uh, when I found out, you know, that I could act, oh my God. And then I found out, you know, luckily that Cheech and I broke up, because then I found out I could do comedy. I could do stand up on my own. You know, I could do an hour, 2 hour show if I had to, all by myself, you know. And Cheech could too, but he hasn't evolved to that point where he's comfortable with doing that. You know, that's why he'll diverse and get into other things. And to him, acting was just acting. Doesn't matter what character you play. Well, with me, it was different, because I saw that Cheech and Chong we had our own. We still do. We had our own file. You know, people were comparing a lot of things to Cheech and Chong. And so when it came to becoming characters in a Disney movie, I didn't feel comfortable, especially using the Cheech and Chong thing. And so I turned it down. I turned down thing because I didn't want, and I still don't want to do Cheech and Chong in a Disney movie unless I did it with Zootopia. And the reason I did Zootopia for Disney was because they came to me. They said, we want that character. We want the stoner character. That now you see, at one time, Cheech and Chong weren't allowed into Disneyland, because we talked about dope and everything. No, Cheech ignored that right away, and he just wanted to be the actor. So he took Lion King. And I never, and there was we did another thing called Fern Gully, and we were more Cheech and Chong characters, but when we did it, Cheech did his bit. No, I did my bit, and then Cheech did his bit, and I was waiting to see Cheech, after, because we always had a ritual, where we'd get together and see, but Cheech didn't want to see me. He'd wanted to get away from my influence, I guess. And so we never met, and then we never really got together after that, and then when we did get together, it was sort of like a truce. Okay, Cheech will be him, Cheech, and then Chong will be Chong, and then we had a sort of like kind of write the movie but not take credit for it, or write the show, and you know what I mean. It was just a lot of unnecessary pandering that I call it. But anyway, everything worked out the way it should. I got to get my family involved in my projects. I got my son, and I got my wife. She's my partner, and everything worked out good. But yeah, that's why I couldn't. I've always held Cheech and Chong in higher regard than I did Disney.
Absolutely. How'd you get the role on this 70s show, or on that 70s show?
Well, funny thing, Cheech had just been offered to go on Nash Bridges, and they offered me a role in Nash Bridges too. But I guess they knew that I would never take it, because it never amounted to anything. But at the same time, I got offered that 70s show, and I went down and I met them, and they told me what they wanted. They wanted they didn't want the Chong character of Cheech and Chong. They wanted to create a new character called Leo. But I told them it would be the Chong character called Leo. And they had no problem with that. That's what they hired me exactly for, my character. And it proved out, wow, it proved out very well, because we did 8 years. No, I did 5 years on that show, but it went 8, so it went into syndication. And the funny thing was, I wanted to raise at the beginning of the 4th season, and they wrote me out of the show. And luckily they did, because I got busted the same year. And so I would have been out of the show anyway. And then when I got out of jail, they wrote me back in the show. And so it was like I never really left. It was, the 70s show was pretty awesome, because Cheech and I had always ad-libbed our own lines. We wrote our own score bits because of our improvisational training. But the 70s show, they didn't want me to ad-lib anything. That wasn't my character's role. And so everything I did on that show was written by writers. And up until then, I never had much respect for writers, because I really never knew how to do someone else's script, And but after that 70s show, and then during the 70s show too, I used to, because I never had a big part, so I had a lot of downtime. But instead of, just sitting in my dressing room, I would come on the set and pretend I was in school, like sitting there auditing a class, and I'd watch and learn how the director would get his actors in line, and how to get them in character, and how to get them. So I learned a lot. I learned a whole lot. I went to sitcom school during that 70s show, and at first, there was people that they weren't too friendly to me on the show, because the actors live in their own world. And Kitty, the mom, she didn't like me being on the show. She was a little scaredy cat, But at the end, when we wrapped it, the last scene we did, she called me Tommy instead of Leo, and it was pretty touching. It was pretty touching. We all got to really, really fall in love with each other on that show, and it was to this day, and it shows you how real life it was, because Ashton and Mila got together, all those Jackie and Kelso, all those years of Jackie and Kelso paid off.
My last question for you is, who do you think is the greatest comedian of all time? You were telling us all the people you have met. Of all those people, and even some maybe you haven't met, who do you think was the greatest of all time?
I have to say Red Fox.
Okay.
Red Fox, because Red had three careers, actually. Red was the first to do what people call obscene humor. He was the first to have the R-rated, X-rated comedy album out, because everything he did was so dirty and so disgusting, but so funny. I saw Red in Detroit, where he did 2 hours. He did 1 hour, he brought the people up, and then he brought them down to the point where they were running out of the club, literally, because he got so gross and so disgusting that these people, I'm out of here. I'm out of here. He ran them out of the club. And then he went to the door and opened the door for them as they left. And then he says, then he got back up on stage and did another hour of bringing them back. So because he had been doing it for 20 years before that, even longer. He had so much material, and he had such a great memory for that material. And he also, when he was off stage, he wasn't funny. Like a lot of comedians, they can't turn it off, But Red Fox had the control, because of being black and being a comedian. That was very, very tricky. David Chappelle found that out, because when Chappelle quit, the reason he quit was that he went so into the vault of the black psychic, of the black person, and he allowed the people to see into the real thinking of a black person in America today. And the problem was that the racists were laughing at the wrong things. They weren't getting the message. They were just getting the first part, the hamming it up, the rolling of the eyes, or the flapping of the lips, or anything. See what happened during slavery time, and it doesn't matter who's enslaved. in order to get treated better, if a slave could make the slave owner or the slave master laugh, be entertained, then that slave had a chance of freedom, if nothing more than being treated better than everybody else. And so that's the art of comedy that was perfected during the Jim Crow era. And it wasn't just to make people laugh, it was to keep from getting murdered, to keep from getting lynched. You see, they're not going to lynch someone that makes them laugh, or they're going to protect him. I like that boy, leave it, let that boy be, but if you had the least bit of anger or resentment, and those white people knew it, they knew it purposely. The white slave drivers, they knew, they were all amateur psychologists. They knew what, and that's why the fear was there, because they lived so close to them that they knew that they had a tiger by the tail, that the minute the shoe was on the other foot, those white guys were in deep shit. It wasn't necessarily true, but in a lot of cases it was, because you can't treat human beings like that and then the next day say, oh, let's forget about it, let's be friends. This goes into generation. That's why it took generations to get to where we are now, and where we are now is just the beginning, which it always is. We're always into a beginning phase, but what the beginning of the phase that we're in now is that we're coming into an area of our life, our existence, where there will be no more wars. See, the wars that are going on, at least not as we used to know them, because we have drones that can go and blow people up without you being there. They did that in Afghanistan, and they thought they found some rebels that were hurting us, so they went and laid a drone on their ass. Of course, they miscalculated, as is the way that shit goes down. But we're coming into I've already been in that phase, of enlightenment, and a lot of us have, and the enlightenment part, it comes with science, like the phone. Like right now, you and I we're conversing over a phone, which never existed a few years ago. Before we wanted to talk to each other, we had to get on a landline, and yeah, so we're evolving, and we're evolving at a nice rate, and eventually, and if you notice that people are always looking for enemies, and the reason is that we're in a physical universe, and you need both. You know how Trump said there's no nice people on both sides? Well, there has to be nice people on both sides, because that's the only way our government and our civilization can work. We're not all created equal. Some are smarter than others, and the reason is, one of our lessons on Earth is to help each other. That's our lesson. That's what we have to learn eventually, and we are slowly coming to that crossroads, where we are listening. Because when you look at it, I've had great epiphanies, through my smoke and everything, and my thinking, and being locked down, really helped. because then I don't have to worry about anything else but what's in my mind, what's in my head, you know. And what's in my head is I see the future, and the future is so beautiful. It's incredible because uh, what I learned, and I'll say it when I'm asked, is that being an eternal being. Now, the scriptures have always said this, you know, that we are eternal beings. We've always been. There's never been a beginning, and there never will be an ending. We're a circle, and but we're more of a spiral. Now that spiral can go up, or that spiral can go down. It depends on how you're thinking and what you need to learn. Now, if you're pure, the pure rises. It rises, like in when you harvest hash. What they do in India and Afghanistan, where they have fields of hash growing or marijuana growing, the workers wear these leather vests and aprons and nothing else. And they go out and they gather pollen. And when they gather pollen on the leather outfits that they're wearing, they go into a room like a temple. Usually, it would be a temple. And as they take off the substance that's on their bodies, the light of the light rise and clings to the roof of the temple. Now, they at the end of the harvest, they'll scrape the stuff off the roof of the temple, the ceiling of the temple, and they make them into temple balls, they're called. And it's for the priest or for the holy ones that are in contact with God, because that's the purest of the pure hemp or the marijuana. And all you do is compress it into hash balls, and then you can smoke it or eat it or whatever. And that gives you a chance to be one with God. And that's what's been happening. That's what happens with jazz musicians, because jazz really is a combination of numbers, musical numbers. And the jazz itself is a result of experimenting with different numbers, putting different combinations together. And the funniest thing is when we look at the blockchain now and Bitcoin and what we have, NFTs, you know, all you're really doing is gathering a barcode of one individual, say, piece of art or a coin. And like us, we have DNA. We can tell what family we're from, and we can tell who we are because we're individuals. Now we're coming into a system of being able to catalog our wealth. And our wealth always, not just accidentally, but always includes art. Art. And that's what the pyramids were about. That's what these ancient buildings, ancient churches were about. They're all art. It shows you what man can do on his own, you know. And yeah, you have spiritual help, but the spiritual help is within. And the spiritual help gives you the knowledge and the wherewithal to create the art that you want to create. But it's done by humans, and like you and I, and we're learning that anything Jesus could do, we could do. We each have the same mind that was in Jesus is in all of us. And so we have that ability. And what we're doing now is we're slowly learning how much ability we really have. And now the trick is, because we're individuals, we all evolve at our own speed. Like if you look at a lawn, the green lawn made of grass, it all that lawn, no matter how big it is or how small it is made up of a collection of tiny little grass blades, individual grass blades. And that's what we are as humans. Someone said, some scientist said that there are many galaxies in the heavens as there are sand, grains of sand on Earth. Not in a desert, but on Earth, the entire Earth. There are more galaxies than that. So infinite is quite a hell of a number.
You got it?
Yeah, I just got one more. About him. Anyway, we can connect with you can connect us to him. I know, he's a bit part of what you guys had going on. Is that possible?
You talking about Cheech?
Yeah.
What's the question?
He wants to know if there's any way we could you could help us connect with Cheech.
Oh, sure. I'll well, you ran it through my son, right? Paris?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. I guess the same. Go through Paris, and only ask for Cheech.
Okay.
That's the best way. And then Paris will have to find a way to get his number. I have his number, but I don't know how to text it to you guys or whatever. And I'll tell Cheech myself. I'll tell Cheech that you guys want to talk to him. And I'll tell him I told him a lot of shit that he'll need to correct.
That's the perfect way to end this. Tommy, it's an absolute honor. You're a legend. Thank you for coming on the show today. You have any socials you want to advertise or anything you want to promote?
Well, get ready for a Tommy Chong Cannabis alert. I'm going to start doing Tommy Chong Cannabis alerts and to advertise where you can buy our product. With different stores. I don't have a list in front of me right now, but I'm going to start doing a cannabis alert. And my wife and I, we're going to do more TikTok. We haven't been on TikTok for, I think, a couple of weeks now. So we're going to work on that today too. So TikTok, get ready for Tommy and Shelby. We're coming your way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Tommy Chong, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.